Hi Val, I'm Ashley.
Hello.
I'm going to be your student physical therapist today. And before we get started on our talk, this is recorded, so I just want to make sure that I have your consent to share this with my class, HP 531 Clinical Medicine 1.
I consent.
Perfect. Okay, so first, can you tell me a little bit about your pain experience? I know that you have hurt your wrist in the past, so yeah, can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I went skating one time because I was trying to learn how to skate, and it didn't work out because I was skating, and then I ended up falling, and I fell forward on my wrist. My wrist looked kind of weird, but then I was like, well, people usually say if it's broken, it hurts a lot, and I wasn't crying, and people also say if something's broken you can't really move it, so I was like, well, I can move it, so it's it's probably fine, but there's a little bump, and I was like, but then I was like, it's fine, and then my mom was like, it's fine, so I was like, okay. But then several hours later, I went with my dad, and then he saw it, and he was like, we gotta go to the doctor.
Yeah.
So then I went to the doctor, and then they were gonna do an x-ray on it, so they had to move it and stuff, and when they started moving it, I was like, ow, it kind of hurts. And then they did the x-rays, and then they came back, and then they were like, it's definitely broken. And I was like, what? And then it did kind of hurt. And so they put a splint on it until I could go see a bone specialist or something. And while I had the splint on, it was throbbing, and it did hurt a lot more than when I had originally fallen.
Yeah.
And so then a couple of days passed, or a week or something, and then I went to the bone doctor, and then they took the splint off, and then I was like, hey, this looks kind of not how it originally did.
Yeah. And
so then they x-rayed it, and then they were like, yeah, your bone is not broken at all. And I was like, wow. And then, yeah, it didn't hurt as much.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I guess first of all, I want to explain how the pain process goes in the average situation. So basically, we have these receptors all over our body, and anytime something triggers it, touch or a fall, pressure, heat, cold, it sends a message to the spinal cord, and they're called nociceptors, by the way. They're danger receptors. Okay. So it sends a message to the spinal cord hey, this is going on this part of your body. In this case, it would have been your wrist. And then the spinal cord sends that message up to the brain. And really, the spinal cord is just the messenger. The brain is the one that analyzes the situation. Okay, where are you? Who are you with? Have we been in this situation before? And am I worried, basically? And if it's a situation that you have been in before and there was nothing to worry about, the brain's just oh, okay, it's fine. But if it perceives the situation as a threat, that's when it starts being okay, make her be in pain so that she stops whatever she's doing. We need to protect ourselves, kind of. Yeah, an example that I've heard in class is have you ever just had bruises on your legs that you have no idea where they come from? Yeah, so it would be pretty annoying if every time we bumped our leg or something, we were ow, because it happens a lot.
Yeah.
So your brain perceives that as a situation that's it happens all the time. We know it's not dangerous, so it doesn't feel the need to tell you about it. That's why sometimes you just have random bruises and you're what the heck, where did that come from? But where it goes wrong is there are pathways in our brain that when fired, it gives off a specific pain. Like there are pathways in our brain that are linked to a specific pain that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the cells in that pathway can almost like be like linked with cells in other pathways, and it can be anything. It can like be like our knowledge of something, or something like with our family or our culture or the media. So some like I don't know if you've ever had pain when you're about to do something you don't want to do. Like I know, for example, like my headaches can sometimes come before like a big test, or like
like stress.
Yeah. Like it's almost like this pain comes on to like get you like, oh, maybe we can avoid this.
Yeah.
You know. So it's funny because that's an example of like, we call it a neurotag. So it's like this like you're like, oh, I have to do this work. And it can be linked to that pain, and it can cause you to have the pain when you're in that situation.
That's crazy.
Or like an example that we were talking about in class is like, sometimes people with chronic pain, like their pain will come on when they have to call their in-laws, or like or like after their in-laws called, or something like that. So it's kind of interesting. And actually the more that the pain persists, the more pain you have, the more sensitive your spinal cord becomes. And sometimes like your brain has no idea that your spinal cord has become overly sensitized. So that's why pain can come on without even having like an external factor, like without your receptors being triggered. Like that's why it can just be constant pain without any like outside visible reason for it. But with that, like, we just want to make sure to emphasize that like everybody's pain experience is real, because like we have studies to show like literally like people experience pain without like exactly a visible reason for it. And it's totally an unconscious experience, which I'm sure you know, like there's no way for us to be like, oh, spinal cord, like tell the brain this. So it's really like out of our control. But yeah, I guess how it applies to you, I found it interesting how like you didn't experience the pain at first, even though you had fractured your wrist. But have you ever have you fallen a lot before, or have you ever like fallen over and been completely fine?
Yeah, I fall a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, in that case, like your brain might have been in the moment like, oh, this is just another fall, like she's fine. Or even your perception of like, oh, it doesn't look that bad, and your mom telling you it's probably fine, and you're thinking it's probably fine. Even that has an effect on like your experience. There's these terms called descending inhibition and descending facilitation. And descending inhibition is when your spinal cord's like, danger, danger, but your brain's like, nah, it's not that bad. And so it just like kind of makes you, it doesn't cause pain. But descending facilitation is when the spinal cord's like, oh, danger, and then your brain is like, I don't think we're reacting enough to this. Like, this is very, like, we need to react more. And yeah, I feel like that could have been what happened. But also, when you went to the doctor, it started hurting more. And, like, doctors are supposed to, like, make you feel better. But I feel like, in a way, like, we want them to believe us. So we're just, like, it's, like I said, totally unconscious. But I wonder if, like, you know, like, you got to the doctor and you were like, oh, they're, like, gonna fix me. So, like, it started to hurt more, you know? Or, like, I even need to have something to fix, I guess. But, yeah, like, would you say that the pain was worse when you thought it was broken than after you found out that it was fractured?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, that's just another thing I find interesting. Like, in, like, I guess our knowledge is that a break is worse than a fracture. So I feel like even that could have affected your pain experience. But yeah, that's kind of all I had to say. Did that all make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
I feel enlightened.
Great. That's a great thing. That's the point of it all, I guess. So, okay. Well, thank you, Val, for participating in this with me.